Legally in Love, written and narrated by C. Taylor, edited to meet YouTube guidelines. To purchase the unedited book, please click the link in the description. Chapter 22. Her mind couldn't process the sheer comfort and contentment she felt being under the same roof as Christian and Auntie again. It reminded her of the time before Christian went to college, a time she'd missed for years. The idea that they wanted her and John to stay with them into the foreseeable future was like a dream she never allowed herself to want. Their wing of the house granted them a small kitchenette, bedroom suite, ensuite luxurious bathroom, sitting room, an office, and another room for Luke and eventually the baby. The baby. Emma had thought about her condition and hoped she had a good plan. She wanted to talk with them all together, so waited until John got home before discussing it. He returned right at 5:30 as promised, 30 minutes earlier than his usual schedule, which Emma loved. These 3 weeks had fallen like she'd just fallen asleep and woken up, but her heart felt the time apart. She was feeling stronger, but was still resting by the time he returned. He spooned with her the moment he got home, then carried her down to dinner. She was strong enough to walk, but loved him doing it and knew she wouldn't have this excuse much longer. The dinner was delicious. Christian's chef had prepared a lovely lamb and vegetable dish that met all of Emma's diet restrictions. She felt guilty about being a bother to him until she tasted it, and any thought of insisting he not include her on future meals went right out the window. I think I know how I'd like to handle the pregnancy and wanted everyone's feelings on it. Would that be okay? All talking quieted, and they looked at her. I'll take that as a yes. Okay. I will follow my diet religiously for the duration of the pregnancy, even though theoretically, now that I have daily access to the medication for my condition, it shouldn't be necessary. I don't want to take any chances. She paused to gauge their reaction to the first step of her plan. All nodded, so she continued. Second, I'd like to make sure I have a daily dose of, she took John's hand, said medication to give my body the best chance to get us both through safely. John smiled. I recommend daily doses, but okay, he agreed with a wink. Emma felt herself turn red and was about to drag the man back up to their room to get started. Her weakened body would step up for the occasion, she was sure. Glad you're on board, and I would like that very much. Other than that, I'm not sure how much more I could do, so with all this, I still spontaneously feel like I'm going to slip into a coma. As long as my brain is viable, we end the pregnancy immediately. If my brain shuts down before that happens, then I agree to life support until the baby is born. You'll need to authorize it, so know you have my complete support. This sobered the group. She was looking right at Christian and not at John. John's hand tightened on hers. They all agreed Christian would keep legal authority when she was in a coma. They altered her wishes so that as long as her brain was viable, they would give her time. If her brain ever shut down, he would call it after the baby was safe. She was going to do everything she could to make sure that never happened. She feared the pregnancy would be the gamble that pushed her health over the edge and her brain wouldn't survive. Her hand went involuntarily to her belly when Christian nodded his agreement. They were all on board. This was the plan. She would do all she could. John would do his husbandly duty, and she would do her best to make it as pleasurable as possible when she wasn't deliriously lost in pleasure herself. Tears filled her eyes from the emotional weight of what she was saying. The pregnancy was the biggest gamble she'd ever made with only a slim chance of it not going horribly wrong. That's what made the next statement all the more important to admit. Now for the hardest part of my plan, at least for me. I was going to ask if we could stay at least through the pregnancy, but you've already gone straight to my dream of inviting us to move in for good, and for that I am forever grateful. Emotion stole the rest of her breath. And we will be forever grateful you finally agreed and brought John with you, Auntie added. They all chuckled. It was the little stress reliever they all needed. Tears gathered in her eyes again as she forced herself to admit the truth. I'm really going to need all of you. If I'm honest, I've always needed you, but I was too stubborn or afraid to admit it. She took a steadying breath. I don't want to do any of my life on my own anymore. I just want all of you for the rest of forever, if that's okay. About edited time, Emma. Andi burst out while getting to her feet to embrace her sister. Both girls were crying by the time they embraced, and John joined with Christian all hugging together. Andi giggled in the middle. I vote mandatory group hug every night. All agreed with a yes. And we need to start planning date nights at least once a week, if not more. We need to make up for lost time and never stop ever again, Andi requested. And Mommy and Me classes with Andi and Rachel, Emma blurted out before she could stop herself. Everyone froze. Sorry, against my best effort, I can't help but think of being a mom. I know it will make it more emotionally devastating if it doesn't work out, but I can't seem to stop myself. Christian growled, I don't think any of us can. We'll take it one day at a time. They all sat back down to finish dinner. On that topic, I'd like to join everyone at the office tomorrow. Everyone froze again. John looked a little panicked. Emma, I really don't think pushing yourself is a good idea. I promise I'm not trying to push myself. Are the beanbags already in my office? John and Christian nodded. Well, then I can just rest there if I need, but I don't like the idea of you altering your schedule for me. I know you're going to want to argue, but it really will be more stressful for me if I feel like I'm putting any of you out when I could easily do everything I did today at the office. Christian nodded. I'll make sure a refrigerator gets installed so you have access to food and smoothies whenever you need them. I agree and like this idea. The fact that any of us would be able to check on you and be with you whenever we want is something I like very much. It was Christian's words that about made Emma dissolve in sobs. She missed her brother more than she let herself admit. She sniffed back some moisture and smiled with a nod at her brother. The rest of the dinner was relaxed, the food comforting and delicious. She tried to eat as much as her stomach would tolerate so her strength would come back as quickly as possible. By the time she let John carry her back up to her room, she was feeling more herself, a minor post-coma miracle. Later, John was with her. It was a less intense session so they could last longer in the experience. Her body was on fire, felt completely connected with John. She wanted to talk with him about a subject she wasn't sure he'd like, and wanted to be completely connected with him physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It wasn't getting any better than this moment. Emma, can I ask you a favor? John asked before she could start. He moved at the same time, so she was having a difficult time concentrating, which made it all the more fun. Please do, then I have something I want to talk to you about, she gasped. He groaned at the sound of her pleasure. Trying to have a conversation when we do this is one of my favorite things, he chuckled before taking her mouth. He pulled back and kept his rhythm. I'd like to invite Dad and Joyce on a double date. Emma stilled under him. This alarmed him, and he stopped cold. We don't have to, he quickly countered. No, no, it's not that. That's exactly what I was going to ask you, but was worried about how you would react. He laughed and kissed her deeply again, rolled and pulled her on top of him. His hands hard at her hips, rocking her body against him as she moved. Oh, baby, I love when you do this so much, she moaned, her head falling back in intense pleasure. I know, he breathed through gritted teeth. His face this morning at breakfast, right? He looked like he wanted to join but didn't know how. I thought bowling would be right up his alley, she explained before realizing what she said. Both smiled and started to laugh. That was not intentional. You have me mostly distracted right now. I love the challenge of conversation versus pleasure, he panted before grabbing her hands tight against his chest and edited. No words after that, just feral noises from both of them for the next hour as they worked on keeping the session going as long as possible. From John's perspective, John held her late into the night, listening to her breathing and celebrating every time she moved in his arms. His hand protectively covered her stomach. Her plan about the baby had hit hard. He half expected she would insist on sacrificing herself to save the baby if necessary, and realized a tightness in his chest was released the moment she said her priority was surviving. The biggest worry was the reverse scenario if he would resent or even worse, hate the baby because it cost him his wife. Not to mention the torture if the child looked or acted anything like her. Geez, how did anyone ever become a parent? You can't sleep? Her words softly broke his thoughts. He hugged her close to him. Thank you for putting your life as the priority. he confessed in barely more than a whisper. It surprised me. I would have thought I would feel the opposite. Then I realized this world is terrifying and already filled with so much pain. If the roles were reversed and I risked losing you, I'm not sure I could function as a human being, much less a parent, without you. Plus, even if I went to heaven, which I don't think that's where I'd go, it would be hell without you. Between those two things, I just felt like it was important for me to stay, and if we can safely bring this little one here, both of us can protect it together. He was thankful her back was to him. She wouldn't know about his tears until one dropped into her shoulder as he buried his face into the back of her head. Her hand came around and cupped the side of his head. Am I sounding too much like a nut? She asked quietly, breaking the tension. This made him chuckle through his tears. Never, he quit back. It scares me how much I need you sometimes. She could barely admit in a whisper. He kissed the top of her head. I know, me too. She turned in his arms to face him. In this together? He smiled. Always and forever, he answered back. Her smile warmed him to his bones, and he took her mouth gently, their foreheads touching when their lips parted. May I rub your head to help you sleep? She asked gently. His desire for her to do one of his favorite things wrestled with his concern for her to rest, and she was still recovering. One look in her eyes, though, told him she was determined and an argument was futile. Yes, thank you. He relented gladly and adjusted his position to rest his head on her shoulder. It only took her calming hands a few strokes, and his eyes already started to feel heavy. His mind instantly quieted as it always did, no matter the intensity of the trial, court appearance the next day, or stress he was feeling. Her hands quieted everything. Oblivion came fast, telling him the amount of stress she just helped him release. His concern for her tried to wake him up more than once, but she was still stroking his head. Every time he tried to surface, he felt her fingers glide through his hair, and back down he went. By the time morning came and he needed to get ready for work, he was better rested than he'd been for weeks, since before his wife was out of his reach, since the last time she'd stroked his head. Once he was awake, though, he could tell instantly his wife needed him. From Emma's perspective, she listened to his steady breathing, felt his heartbeat against her left chest as he was partially draped over her, his arm resting across her stomach. She loved his relaxed weight against her side. How was this amazing man her husband? How was this her life now? She was overwhelmed by how much she had to live for, but if she was honest, she always did. She convinced herself she survived because she didn't want to cause pain to anyone she loved. Now she realized she couldn't stand to be separated from them. That's what kept pulling her back. Her plan of cutting off everyone to protect them was really her trying to cut off the bond she felt with them so she could finally let go. She couldn't deny how much she needed the people in her life. Not just Christian, Auntie, and John, though they were by far the most important, but also Luke, their family night group, and her mom. She needed to get the courage up to tell her mom. She needed to tell her she was married. Should she tell her about the potential grandchild? Her mother hadn't even tried to contact her since the firing. Maybe she didn't care. Even before the firing, her mother rarely showed much interest in her other than her health issues and legal career. So why hadn't she come when everyone else had for the breakfast? At this point, how would she even explain? John moved next to her, bringing her out of her thoughts and causing her to intake a deep breath. His hand came up to the side of her face, guiding it to look him in the eyes. Baby was all he asked, but she knew what he needed. I don't know how to tell mom, not because I'm not super proud of being your wife, but because it's been so long since we got married. I still haven't told her. He stopped her with a gentle kiss. Your brother already told her she's away in Europe doing a culinary tour, and he thought it would be a good idea not to tell her about your kidnapping or coma. She took a deep breath of relief. Oh, thank heavens he did both. Wait, she's in Europe? What? After your father had his first heart attack, he made Christian promise to make sure your mom followed her dream if he died before he could do it. Christian convinced her to sell the practice and send her on this tour, he explained. Emma felt herself smile as tears gathered. That sounds like Dad. He loved working with her. If she had gone into culinary work, they would have rarely seen each other, and Dad would not have been okay. Law was where their lives intersected. How did that happen? Mom's parents were lawyers. They expected her to follow in their footsteps. At the end of her first year, she decided to change to culinary school when she first met Dad, and he talked her out of it. She meant everything to him. I don't know how Christian talked her into selling the firm. She was going to give the rest of her life to protect his legacy. John stroked the side of her face. Christian said you would have given your life to help her do it. This made Emma chuckle. I would have. He's always been very perceptive. She snuggled into his chest. He brushed his lips across her forehead. She'll be back in a few weeks. Nothing to worry about. Just relax, he soothed, rubbing her back. Feeling stronger, her hand glided down his stomach to his edited. Are you sure, baby? She nodded her head and eased back. The pressure built. She watched him watching her. She felt herself want him as he edited. She gasped by the time he came up against edited. John's hands flexed against her hips. She knew he was struggling to stay still, which he would need to until edited. His desire was building her own, and she was getting impatient for it herself. She leaned forward, and John caught her hands, both gasping. Edited for content. No, baby, give it just a minute. We can do this. It will give. Her breathing became ragged. She gasped and closed her eyes tight, but stayed and nodded her head. Her hands landed against his chest. She felt his chest heaving against their shared desire. They were in this together. She could do this. They could do this. Edited for content. Minutes later, they were both gasping and tangled together in the bed. Well, that went better than the first time, Emma huffed out. John laughed. You can say that again. Emma still gasping. No, I don't think I can, she teased back. Moments later, their breathing relaxed and the morning alarm sounded. You want to take the first shower or the second? Emma asked. John hugged her close. We do it together. You're still in recovery, so until I know you're fully back to normal, I help with everything. Emma giggled and brushed her lips across his chest. Don't tell me that. I'll pretend to be weak and helpless for years. John laughed back. That's my girl. Sometime later. She might have overestimated her recovery, but even though she spent most of the day sleeping in her beanbag chair, being at the office was an enormous relief. The hustle and bustle outside her office was very soothing, and her frequent visitors raised her spirits, even if her body tired quickly. She didn't get nearly as much writing done as she'd wanted. Thankfully, Christian agreed to push back her deadline by a few months. Her next year would be completely virtual from the comfort of her office. Signed copies would be sent directly to bookstores at buyers' requests, since it was important for her to support bookstores and not just online purchases. Personal Zoom meetings at said stores in the form of group Q&As would also be set up for interested locations or chains. She already loved her next tour way, way, way better than her first. Hopefully, her fans wouldn't hate her by the end of it. From John's perspective, 3 nights later, they were enjoying their first double date with Charles and Joyce, the twins in the swimming pool with Kim, Jan, Rachel, and Luke. The couples were enjoying the bowling alley. As both John and Emma guessed, Charles was actually enjoying bowling. He'd already laughed several times. Emma noticed the subtle shock on John's face every time he did. Emma and Joyce left the men for a few minutes to check on the twins. John took a long drag from his root beer in support of his old man's sobriety. He was trying to ignore the instant awkward feeling that descended the moment their women left. Charles was watching his thumbs twirl from where his hands were clasped at his lap. Joyce seems nice, John endeavored. Charles chuckled. She's stern, tough enough to handle me, and the boys know her. John smiled uncomfortably. So, relationship of convenience? Charles shook his head. Oh, no, she's way out of my league and she has a good heart. I'm just trying to enjoy my time with her until she gets fed up and leaves me. Damn, he wished Emma was here. She had a knack of getting people to open up when they showed the slightest sign of wanting to talk. He recognized the signs enough to know his father was opening a window. Never in the entire history of their relationship had John ever been able to do anything but piss the man off. My old man was a piece of work, you know. Emma's given me both barrels on more than one occasion on how mad she is about how I raised you. According to her, my only example of how to be a dad was all wrong. Damn it, where was she? He was gonna mess this up and ruin everything she'd worked on for months. What was he supposed to say? Why wasn't he saying anything? He, he, let's just say when I met your mother, she convinced me my dad was wrong too. Life could be good. She was so sweet. Emotion made his voice shake. John couldn't believe what was happening or what he was hearing. His father never once spoke to him about his mother. I never thought I could be that happy. She was my world, you know? John started to have a hard time breathing. He knew the story had a horrific ending if that's how he felt about her. His mind flashed to his thoughts the night Emma had told them of her plans for her pregnancy. His father had lived John's nightmare. And I look a lot like her, you've said. His words came out in barely a whisper. A strangled sob escaped his throat before Charles turned away and grabbed his handkerchief. John froze. Had he ruined everything? That was hard, but the hardest part was my father was right. Life would always be cruel, then kick you again when you were down. You have to be hard to survive. I thought I had to make sure you survived. I just couldn't let you go when you got into that damn university. You were so much like her. Oh, crap. Everything he said made crystal clear sense to him. His father was being so vulnerable with him for the first time ever. John had an idea and hoped he didn't regret this. I'm gonna need your help then, Dad. Charles stilled next to him. Emma, he started. That girl is an angel, son. You chose a good one. She reminds me so much of your mother. John nodded, cleared his throat, and continued. She's pregnant. Charles' sharp intake told John he understood. It's high risk for both her and the baby. We have a plan to terminate the pregnancy if anything happens to Emma, but there's a lot of unknowns. What if it happens too fast? We can't get the baby out. His voice gave way, emotion preventing anything else. The foreign feeling of his father's hand on his shoulder, then a squeeze. Damn, life's a real jerk, eh? John broke into a surprised laugh. Total jerk, he agreed. I say, if anything happens to her or the baby, we start kicking the crap out of life, he offered. Both chuckled at the same time, clinked their root beer bottles together, and took long drags. Like on cue, both women returned, and they readied for their second set. For the rest of the night, John had never seen his father so relaxed in his life. They did this. Together they became allies in one excruciating conversation. He watched his father hug the twins when they gathered them from the pool, something Joyce said he'd been doing on a semi-regular basis lately. Then he turned and embraced his oldest son. Even more surprising, John hugged him back with only very little discomfort. He understood his father for the first time in his life. Both Emma and Joyce were frozen in shock by the time they backed away from each other. Declan broke their trance by hugging Emma. She came to and hugged both boys, the usual kiss on their foreheads, gave both a quick I love you, and they left. Emma came up to him and settled under his arm, watching him smile what he was sure was the goofiest smile he'd ever smiled. She didn't ask any questions, just leaned in and kissed him on his jaw. He felt her shudder a little and knew it was time to take her to their room. My dad really loved my mom, he finally shared while being with Emma. He was braced, one arm on the bed, the other against the wall above her. She pulled at his arms to reach his neck. He loved when she did that. Was she sweet? She asked breathlessly. Very from what he said, he grunted back. Her tongue swirled his earlobe. He was devastated when she died. He thought his father had been right about having to be cruel for me to survive. Felt like he needed to make me tough. It's what he said, and I have to admit, I finally made perfect sense. Emma stilled under him, pulled his face to look her in the eyes. Because of the dangers of my pregnancy? He couldn't hide anything from her. We both agreed if anything happens to you or the baby, we'll start kicking the crap out of life instead of it kicking the crap out of us. I'm not sure how the hell to do that, but you keep telling me I'm brilliant. Dad has street smarts and can be one mean son of a gun, so we'll come up with something. Her eyes started to glisten as she smiled. I hear mutual projects are a great way for parents and children to bond.